Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Maseches Zevachim Daf Mem Hey. We begin at the Mishnah, which is 6 lines off the top of the Yomid. So we're meant to know that even a goy, the Torah allows even a goy to bring a korban, provided that it's a voluntary korban, a nedava, a neder, a nedava, as opposed to an obligatory korban, a korban chayva, which only a yid can bring. Now, what status does a korban of a goy have? Says the Mishnah, although technically it's a korban and offered on the Mizbeach, the guy can't personally come in, but he'll send it in from afar. However, there are some differences. So according to Rabbi Shimon, many halachas that are applicable to a korban of a yid, such as pigel, noiser, tamei, right? If the kohen had improper machshavos, it becomes pigel, and if one eats it, is chayiv kares. Noiser, if the korban material was left overnight, it becomes asur, and if one should eat it, he's liable to kares. Vitame, when the person is personally tamei, he must keep away from eating this korban. So all these halachas and many others apply only to a Yiddish korban, not a goyish korban. Says the Mishnah, a korban sent in by a goy, all these halachas, pigel, noiser, do not apply to a goy's korban. Likewise, if one typically takes a korban and does a shechita outside the Beis Hamikdash, he's chayiv kares, but not so by the korban of a goy. Divrei, that's the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yossi Machayev, he says no. If he does it outside, he's chayiv, and some learn that according to Rabbi Yossi, all these halachas apply to the korban of a goy without differentiation. Okay, so we have some distinctions between a korban of a yid and a korban of a goy. Pigel, noiser, v'tam, shechita b'chutz. Here comes some more. Tana Rabbanan, says the Brisa. The korban of a goy, lo inen, and although you're not meant to divert it for personal use, it's an isur midrabanan, but technically, if one does so, he has not committed, he has not transgressed the severe violation called mi'ila, which necessitates bringing a korban for doing so. That doesn't apply by a goyish korban. V'lo mo'alim. And likewise, ve'in chayav alei misham pigel, noiser, v'tami, all these don't apply. Furthermore, ve'in oisin tmura. In contrast to a Yiddish korban, which can generate a tmura, he takes another animal, puts it next to the korban, and says this should be an exchange. The kedusha extends over to that additional korban. Not so the korban of a goy doesn't have the ability to make tmura. Ve'in mevin nesachim. Unlike a yid who can offer, can donate oil, wine, a goy cannot do that. Aval karbanon until nesachim. Surely his korban requires nesachim to be brought along with it. Again, the other korban. But he can't donate nesachim separate, just as a separate standalone donation. Divrei, all this is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yossi, I disagree. I treat the korban of a goy just like the korban of a yid. It has the same standard. Shenamar b'hem, because it says Lashem. Right, the pasuk says, a goy, we makriv, ish, right, ish, all men, even goy. They send the korban, shekriv Lashem. It's a korban Lashem. So ultimately, it's the same korban, has the same halachis, just like a Yiddish korban. Now, when Rabbi Shimon excluded the korban of a goy from mi'ila, says the Brisa that only applies to an animal, a korban belonging on the Mizbeach, it's exempt from mi'ila. But when do we say it's exempt from mi'ila? Because of Mizbeach. By a regular korban, but if the guy should donate material, for building maintenance, or send in money for building maintenance, that's like any other hegdish possession. If one uses it, he has committed mi'ila. Why this difference between the two types? We'll see in the Gemara. Coming up right now, actually. So regarding a korban sent by a guy, one should not misuse it. But if he does, there's no mi'ila. Why? Explains the Gemara, that's only midrabanan. Keep away midrabanan. But technically, he has not committed mi'ila. because we learn Me'ilah from Teruma, which is specific to a Yid's, to a Yid. The Gamra Me'ilah, because the halachas of Me'ilah are learned by way of a Gzera Shava connection. Using the words Chet, it says Chet here, it says Chet by Truma, so we connect to Truma, Chet Chet Mi Truma. And by Truma, what does it say? By Truma Ksiv, it says B'nai Yisrael. Ksiv B'nai Yisrael, we learned that it only applies to a Yid, not to a Goy. Just as Truma is limited to a Yid, likewise Me'ilah by Karbanis of a Yid only. There's no Pigul Leis V'Tameh applicable as well. My time, why? So the starting point here is the halacha of Tumah. The Torah warns against consuming a carbon when the person is tummy. And over there it says B'nai Yisrael, limited to a Yid's carbon. We extend that over to Noiser, and then extend it over to Pigul by way of a double Gzera Shava. My time, why do I say Pigul? Because Pigul will learn through the Gzera Shava using the words Avein from Noiser. It says Avein by Pigul, Avein by Noiser. We connect. Avein by Noiser. And Noiser himself learns from Tumah, which is limited to a Yid. Noiser will learn through a Gzera Shava using the words Chilul from Tumah. And by Tumah it says, Tumah, which is the source material, it says B'nai Yisrael. Only Kache B'nai Yisrael, only a Jewish carbon, V'loi, not the carbon of Oidei Kacham. So once we establish that Tumah only applies to Yiddish carbon, by extension, Noiser as well, and Pigul as well. Venis and Tmura, it cannot generate a Tmura, my time, why? The Iskash Trumura la Maser, Behema. We find a connection in the pasuk between Tmura and Maser Behema, that's the 10th animal, which is brought as a carbon. And then we turn around and we connect Maser Behema to Maser Dagan, to grain Maser taken from the farm. And by the Maser Dagan, we know it only applies to a Yid. So by extension, Maser Behema as well, and Tmura as well. By way of this double hekesh, this double connection. My time at the Iskash Tmura le Maser Behema, Iskash le Maser Dagan. Maser Dagan Ksib, by Maser Dagan it says, B'nai Yisrael, as opposed to a Goy, V'loi of the Kichav. Now the question is, we all know that by halachas of karbanis, we cannot make a double hekesh. It just doesn't work. You can make a double Gzera Shava, not a double hekesh. And here it's a double hekesh. First we're connecting Maser, Behema to Maser Dagan, because it says Aser to Aser, a double Maser, connecting the two types of Masers. Then we take the halacha that we now learned from Maser Dagan to Maser Behema, we take that and export it further to Tmura by way of another connection, because the pasuk relates to Tmura and Maser Behema in the same pasuk. V'hayahu Tmurasai, the Maser Behema and his exchange. So we have a double connection. First, we take the information from Maser Dagan, transport it to Maser Behema, and then over to Tmura. You can't do that when it comes to halachas of karbanis. Since when is information which is derived from a hekesh? Can now turn around and be exported further to another destination by way of another hekesh. How can he do that? Answer is Maser Dagan Chulunu. The source here, the source of this whole chain is Maser Dagan, right? And that's really chulun, that's not a kodesh material. So that allows for this extended connection. Maser Dagan Chulunu. Yeah, it all depends. If the determining factor is what the source material is, then you're right. There's no issue in this case. But if that doesn't really determine, rather it's the recipient, it depends whether he's kodesh or not. Well, then in that case, the recipient here is kodesh, which doesn't allow for a double connection. That's according to the opinion Basar Malamed Azlin. We look at the teacher, we look at the source. We look at the recipient, the one who's trying to learn. Michael, remember, in this case you can't because it's all kachim. Eller says the Gemara like this: we don't need a double connection. We have one connection between Tmura and Maser Behema. And we all know that Maser Behema is only limited to a Yid. Why? Rashi says that the pasuk, which allows a guy to bring a carbon, speaks about Nidarim, Nidreim, Nidvoisam, he promises, he donates, rather than something which is a chayva, an obligatory korban, whether it has a set time or not a set time. Even though the Gemara does relate to set time, Rashi explains we don't want to get involved in obligatory korbans that don't have a set time, because then it gets confusing, and it sounds almost like he can't bring anything. In any case, the point here is that the only korban that a guy can offer is something which is comparable to maser. That's only a donation, not something which is like maser behema. Maser behema is an example of a korban which a guy cannot bring because it's a chayva. It's something which is a chiv. It's an obligation. So just like the maser behema is off limits to a guy, likewise Tmura, which is connected to maser behema in the pasuk. Simple as that. Ela maser behema chayva. Rather, maser behema is an example of a korban which is a chayva. You have to do it. Shein kavul ozman, which doesn't really have a set time, but the point is that main thing is that it's a chayva. Shein kavul ozmanu, and v'chayva, an obligatory korban. Shein kavul ozman, which doesn't have a set time. Yisrael ma'asu, only a yid brings. V'loy v'gecham le ma'asu, a guy doesn't bring. Likewise, it's Tmura, which is in the same pasuk. What else? Vein mezivin nisach. In contrast to a yid who can just donate wines and oils, a guy can't do that. Tana Rabbanan. Why? Because by the discussion of Nesachim, which is in Parsha Shlach Lecha, the pasuk refers to the term Ezrach, a citizen. Only a permanent member of our community has the ability to bring Nesachim as a separate donation. Ezrach may be Nesachim, but a guy not. Veinad V'chav may be Nesach. Okay, if he's locked out of Nesachim, perhaps his korban doesn't either require Nesachim, which is a standard fare for every korban. Yachal loyte oilase. What about his korban orla? It would not either need Nesachim to Nesachim time. No, we have the pasuk. Kacha yasal shar. Every korban needs Nesachim, whether a yid's korban or a guy's korban. Rashi explains it. In fact, if the guy sends it in, fine, but if fails to send it in, we have to, the community sponsors it, because that's a required accompaniment to every korban. Okay, so according to Rabbi Shimon, many halachas do not apply to a guy's korban, pigel, noiser, tameh, mi'ila, tmura, and shchita b'chutz. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yossi, re'ani b'kulam lahachmer. I'm strict with a guy's korban as well. All halachas apply. But then the Gemara concludes, even according to Rabbi Shimon, who discounts the guy's korban from mi'ila, that only applies to a korban of a guy, but not a donation that he donated to the bedek habayis, to the building fund. My time, why that difference between kachim mizbeach, which are free of me'ilah, and kachim bedek habayis, which have me'ilah? My time because he holds. Let's go back to the source. How do we know to discount me'ilah? By way of connecting to truma. Now truma is inherently holy. You can't redeem it. It's not just a financial kedusha; it's inherent kedusha. Likewise, a korban mizbeach, which has inherent kedusha, has the same status and is free of milah. But kosher bedek habayis, which is a different type of kedusha. Kedusha is dam; it's a monetary status. So that is a different runs according to different laws, and there would be milah there as well. My time because he holds ki gamra milah. Chet mitruma, when me'ilah was learned from truma by the way of the chet tirashava, dumi the truma, the kaddish kedusha gov. That's limited to something which has the same type of kedusha like truma, which is inherently kaddish, such as kachem mizbeach. Aval kedusha bedek habayis, but kedusha bedek habayis, the kedusha is dama, which is monetarily kaddish. A different type of kedusha loy has a different system, and mi'ilah would apply there as well. Now there's one more element we have yet to discuss. Ritzitzitz. So the tzitz, the golden, forehead plate that the Kohen Gadol would wear, which says Kodesh Lashem, would, in effect, generate an override system, just in case there was some sort of tumah mishap in the Beis HaMikdash, of the blood of a korban became tamei, and the Kohen, processed it. So the tzitz would affect a ritzui. would sort of override that issue and allow the process through. Does that apply to a carbon of a guy? Should his carbon become tamei and the kohen did the zrika? Does the tzitz address it? Tanar Rabbanan, dam shenitma, blood of a carbon, the base of became tamei. Vizarka, and the kohen did zrika regardless, b'shoigig, by mistake, hurtza. It's accepted. The tzitz takes care of it. But if he did it knowingly, we made it lo hurtza. No, doesn't count. Now Rashi explains why. It's a knas med the Rabban. You shouldn't have done it. Rabban penalized him, and it doesn't mean to say you bring a new carbon. You can't bring a new carbon because if in a Torah it was a valid carbon, you can't just bring your own carbon now, unnecessarily. It just means to say you can't eat the flesh. We treat it like an invalid carbon. But when do we say this is so? By a private carbon, but if this occurred with a public carbon, bein b'shoigig, bein b'mezid hurtza, whether it happened b'shoigig, b'mezid, the tzitz takes care of it. We treat it like a valid kosher carbon. That's only by a Jewish carbon. By a non-Jewish carbon, it will not benefit from the tzitz's services. Bein b'shoigig, bein b'mezid, either way, loy hurtza. There's no ritzi. It says, the carbon was not done. Now you would think that this brisa is only in line with Rabbi Shimon, who differentiates between a carbon of a yid, carbon of a guy, regarding many halachas. Likewise, regarding ritzutzitz. But according to Rabbi Yossi, who treats the carbon of a guy pretty much the same as the yid, perhaps ritzutzitz will apply to it as well. Amru Rabbanan, so Rabbanan presented their suggestion, kamei, in front of the Rapapa. Come on, like who are we going? Like Rabbi Yossi, not Rabbi Yossi, because according to him, why would you differentiate? The Rabbi Yossi, according to him, Ha'amar, didn't he tell us? V'kulan, regarding all those halachas, pigul, noiser, etc. Ani roya lahachmer, I consider the carbon of a guy same standard. I'm strict. I apply them all to the guy as well. Assumingly, ritzitzitz too. Amul Rapapa, so Rapapa, no, ritzitzitz is different. Even Rabbi Yossi agrees. Rabbi Yossi, this brisa works even according to Rabbi Yossi. You know why? Shani Hasan, the Makro. By ritzitzitz, it's very different because the Torah singles out. It says, "V'haya al mitzchay tamid." The tzitz is placed on his metzach. L'ratzain lahem lifnei Hashem, only for them. For who? For the Yidden. Lahem means lahem, v'loy, not for the guy like Yecham. So they're locked out of this system. Amalei Rafuna. Breder Rav Nosson Rav Papa. Yes, Rav Papa. If lahem is limiting, is excluding the guy, what about the pasuk Asher Haim by the halacha of refraining from eating a carbon on your tummy, which according to Rabbi Yossi applies to the guy's carbon as well. But the carbon says Haim, which according to you is exclusionary. Elamiat, if that's the case, Asher Haim Magdishim. Here as well, you should say Haim means only a carbon of a yid is open to this halacha. V'loy, and not the carbon of a kechavim. But clearly Rabbi Yossi said that halachas of tumah apply there as well. It's how can you differentiate? Elam Rav Ashi. Let me explain to you. Amar Kro, the pasuk by the tzitz says l'rotzen. L'rotzen, the focus is on the word l'rotzen. Only a yid has that. Rashi explains. L'rotzen lahem means rotzen lakadosh baruch hu hem she'einem esratzel lahem. Only a yid is zeicha to find this added favor in the eyes of Hashem. So even though there's a mishap, the carbon was tamei, the tzitz allows it through by relating to ratzin. The ratzin is lashon of will. Our will, our ratzin, our desire, our inherent deep desire is to do Hashem's ratzin. Ratzeinenu, right? Lasas ratzanecha. So Hashem sort of allows it through, overlooks this, superficial, deficiency. Deep down, you're good, you want to be. So the tzitz takes care of that. L'ratzin lehem. We assume the guy doesn't have that privilege. Lav b'nei hartzah nino. They're not candidates for hartzah. They don't have this internal, line up with Hashem. So that allows us to conclude that the tzitz will only help the carbon of a yid. Only a yid has that privilege. Okay, so in summary, a guy can send in a carbon, a neder, and a dava. What about its status? According to Rabbi Shimon, Many halachas only apply to either shekarm, not to a goy shekarm, such as pikul noiser b'tamei, meila, shrita b'chutz, tamura. A guy cannot bring nesachim as a separate standalone donation. Rabbi Yossi is machmer all these things, but even he agrees a guy will not benefit from ritzitzitz. Continues the Mishnah. Back to our topic of pigul. So, although we had a long list of items that are not really open to pigul, because, as we discussed many times, the pigul status is limited to a carbon which has that dual component, the mater-niter arrangement. The item that permits and the item that gets permitted, such as the flesh of a carbon, which gets permitted for consumption by the processing of the dam. And should pigul occur during the processing of the dam, that carries over to the permitted item. So the dam affects the other part for better or for worse. But the dam itself doesn't have a permitter. Right? He's not affected by others. So the pigul status doesn't apply to him. Likewise, if it's a ketores, which is just a single item without a double component to it, there's no pigul as well. However, says the Mishnah, you should know, although pigul would not apply to these things, but other halachas do, like noiser, like tamei, right? They're left overnight. If one eats it, he's chayev kares. If one is tamei and eats these things, he's chayev kares. Those apply to all items. Even in edibles, like firewood of the mizbeach, like the incense. Rashi brings there's a pasuk of habasar, extra pasuk to include even things which are inedible. The fact that they're kodesh material, we sort of elevate them to a higher status. They're deemed like they're edible and susceptible to all penalties of edible materials. Says the Mishnah Dvarim, even those items she'ein chayav aleim mishum pigul, which one is not chayav on them on account of pigul, but chayav aleim mishum noiser mishum tami, those apply. We have one exception, dam. Dam blood is different, as we'll see in the Gemara. Reb Shimon says, I grant you the edible items, but not the inedibles. Reb Shimon machayev b'davar shedarkan le'echla. He says, yeah, things which are edible, fine. Aval eitzim, but wood, v'alavoyna, akteris, inedible spice, incense. Ein chayav alav mishum tumah. There's no chayav tumah. And the first explained, noiser as well. He says it's limited only to edibles. Tana Rabbana. So how do we know, in fact, that noiser and tamei are broader than pigul, which is limited to specific items? Tana Rabban Yochel lo yu chayav mishum tumah. Perhaps no. Tumah is limited only to things which have pigul. El adav sheish lo matirin. Bein adam bein mizbeach. Just like pigul requires matirin. Right? For instance, the basar of the carbon has matirin. So the blood is mata the basar for personal consumption. It's mata the imurin for mizbeach consumption. So perhaps the chiv of tumah, which means that if a person's tummy eats these things, is limited likewise to this type of material. And actually I can prove it through logic, through a kal v'chomer. If pigul is limited, certainly tumah is limited. Why? Uma pigul, since pigul, which in a way has more strictnesses over tumah. 3 elements of chumrah. Number 1, shul b'kviya. One transgresses pigul, has to bring a very expensive animal, a set animal, fixed. There's no fluctuations. It's not financially dependent. It's not like the other korbanos, some of them which you can choose to bring a bird. No, you got to bring an animal. It's a set, fixed thing. Ubidiyah achas. And in a way, it's very easy to trigger this liability. One discovery is enough. Rashi explains, as long as he finds out after the fact he ate pigul, he has to bring a korban. And likewise, there are no exceptions to the rule. There are no situations which allow for pigul. So he has 3 advantages. Still, he's limited in scope. He's limited to only those items which have matir. Certainly tumah, which doesn't even have those 3 advantages. In fact, he has 3 disadvantages relative to pigul. Number 1, in terms of the cost of the carbon, it's a fluctuating carbon. If he can't afford, he brings birds or even a mincha. So it's more lenient. Number 2, b'shtei yadiyos. There are more conditions. It's harder to be liable for tumah. 2 yediyos, Rashi explains. He has to know beforehand that he became tummy, and after the fact, discovered that he ate it when he was tummy. So it's, in a way, it's harder to trigger this liability. Vucher mechlolo. Thirdly, there are exceptions. Right? If it's a public carbon, we all know it's mutar. You can bring a carbon even when you're tummy. So the concept of tumah has mitigating factors. So wouldn't you think that certainly his scope is limited as well? Wouldn't you agree that perhaps tumah only applies to those types of items which have matirin, just like a pigul? It can't be worse than pigul. No, says the pasuk regarding warning against eating something when you're tumah. Keep away from the karbanos of Bnei Yisrael. This covers all types of karbanos. Okay, fine, settled. Now, at what point are we speaking? Before the carbon was processed? So a person's tummy eating the carbon. He's chayiv kares even if he ate it before the carbon was processed? Or do we need a fully processed carbon to trigger this liability? Yochel miyad, perhaps right away? No, tamlami yikrav. Pasuk says, Asher yirkrav mekal zarachem. Yikrav means, we're going to conclude it means like a lashon of carbon, lashon of processed. So after it's processed and it's enabled for consumption, if one eats it, he's chayiv kares. But we're going to get to that in a second. So first we have the word yikrav, which almost sounds like come close, touch, contact. Just for contacting the carbon, touching the carbon, he gets kares. Amar Blazer, nah. Since one is touching a carbon, triggering chiyuv. In fact, the next pasuk there says if he eats, I mean, we're talking about eating. So why is the pasuk use the word yikrav? To tell you. At what point in the process we're speaking about? Tumah only applies b'huchshali karav, a carbon which has been enabled for akrava. It has gone through its process of akrava, and now it's ready for consumption by man or by mizbeach. Okay, for instance, yesh matirin. If it's a standard carbon which has matirin, for instance, it has the blood. She cover matirin. As soon as the blood is processed, now the rest has been freed, permitted for personal or mizbeach consumption. If he chooses to eat it when he's tummy, now he's liable. In the matirin, a carbon which doesn't have matirin, such as the kaimitz itself, or mishi kaddish bekli. So in that case, as soon as it's inserted into a holy vessel, it's now elevated, and it's enabled for processing, for aktorah on the mizbeach, etc. Right, so the mincha of the kayin, which is fully burnt on the mizbeach, as soon as it gets into the kli, it's now enabled for further consumption, for mizbeach consumption. At this point, the chiv of tumah kicks in. Okay, ashkan tumah, we have settled the tumah halacha. It applies to all these karbanos. Now the Mishnah said, just because pigul doesn't apply, doesn't mean that tumah doesn't apply. Doesn't mean noiser doesn't apply. Now we've settled tumah. What about noiser? How do we know that noiser too has a broader scope than pigul? Noiser menelam. We learn it from tumah. Asya, we learn it through Gzeir Shava. Chilu chulu mitumah. It says chilu here. It says chilu by tumah. We connect and we compare. Why? Why don't you learn from pigul? That it's limited. Oven by pigul. Let's learn through a different Gzeir Shava. Oven over here, oven by pigul, limited to only specific items. No, mistaver, it's more probable to learn it from tumah, because we have 3 commonalities between noiser and tumah. Shekain gezel siman stands for 3 items. Gimel, zayin, lamed. Rashi explains. In contrast to pigul, which is an external force, it's a thought process which was an external from the carbon. Tumah is internal; it's on the material itself, and likewise, noiser. The carbon was left over; it's internally inherently deficient. That's one comparison. The zayin stands for zrika. So, in contrast to pigul, which requires the zrika as the culmination of the akrava to trigger the pigul, tumah and noiser doesn't have that. The zrika by pigul is what triggers the psul, but noiser and tumah were not caused by the zrika. Let's put it this way: it wasn't caused by the zrika. That was done with the improper thought. So once again, they have that commonality which pigul doesn't have. And finally, lamed is chilul. Stands for the lamed in the word chilul. in both noiser and tumah we have the word chilul as opposed to pigul. So we have enough in common between these two, which explains the connection. Shengei Gedelson. Well, one second. Look elsewhere. Adrab, just the opposite. Pigul have a little melav. If anything, I prefer connecting noiser to pigul. In fact, we have 5 common denominators between those two, which are not found by the tumah. Shekein hutar, tzitz, tor, bezman, karev, 5 items. First one is hutar, in contrast to tumah, which allows for leeway, allows for exception if it's a public carbon. Noiser and pigul don't have any exceptions. Next item is tzitz, in contrast to tumah, which is sometimes accommodated, overridden by the tzitz. Noiser and pigul don't have that luxury. Third item is tahar. Pigul and noiser are both tahar materials as opposed to tumah, which is different, it's tummy. Bezman, pigul and noiser are both time-related deficiencies. Pigul is where he was plotting. Noiser was actually left beyond its time. Finally, we have karev. In contrast to tumah, where it's the person eating, not the actual carbon material. Noiser and pigul are on the deficiencies within the actual material. Unefficient. These are more in number. It's 5 comparisons as opposed to the 3 comparisons between the other, between noiser and tumah. So go this way, right? So this is the equation. We have on the right side of the spectrum we have tumah, which we've established applies to all carbonates, not limited to certain, applies to everything. On the other side of the equation we have pigul, which is very limited, only thing that have matir. In the middle we have noiser. Which way to go? Compare it to tumah and give it a broader scope, or compare it to pigul? Says the Gemara, Ella rather than Tani Levi, it's based on Levi. Tani Levi, he's going to focus back on that pasuk which speaks about tumah. And within that pasuk itself, we have a hint, a reference to noiser as well, that it applies to all carbonates. And that settles the issue. Tani Levi, Menayin Shaf Psul Zman. How do we know that within that pasuk, warning against eating something when you're tummy, there's also a reference to Psul Zman, to material which has overstayed its time, i.e. noiser. Talmud Bavli, as kosher bnei Yisrael. The chalalu, says Rashi, is lashon rabim. Could have said lo yichalu. Shouldn't desecrate. The chalalu is plural. B'shnei chilulin. Ha-kosher b'Torah here is indicating 2 types of chilul. Echad psul noiser, echad psul tumah. Whether the issue is tumah or noiser, and both apply to all carbonates. As per the pasuk, asher hey magdishim, right? Magdishim, like we said before, is a broad reference to all types of carbonates. Hence we know that although pigul is limited to certain carbonates, but just as tumah is unlimited, likewise, noiser. All the best to you and atzlacha.